Hey guys, Half-A-Dead here. With the upcoming RLCS Season 8 World Finals in Madrid this Friday to Sunday, I wanted to take the opportunity to make some very bold predictions about what mechanics we'll see in the future of competitive play. And maybe you can catch a few of them happening already this very weekend. First, I need to clarify that when I'm talking about future mechanics, that doesn't mean I'm going to reveal things now that nobody knows or has ever done. Rather, I'm talking about things that players are currently not doing much, and things that are going to get practiced and used much more in the future. I'm not blindly guessing. I'm looking at the current meta and gameplay and considering what would realistically be able to counter it. But yeah, it's a prediction, so no guarantees. Let's start with speed dribbles. Whenever speaking of dribbling, Chaussette will immediately pop into everyone's head. But my prediction isn't about imitating him. He's great at dribbles in general, but what sets him apart isn't speed, it's his ability to read the defenders and counter their specific moves. So why do speed dribbles? The problem with dribbles in threes at a high level is that there is always a rotating player of the opposing team chasing you from behind. That player has a simple job. They just have to mess you up in any way to disrupt your play. You can do little except drive away fast. Accelerating the ball quickly isn't too difficult of a task. The part that is difficult is to do so while staying in full control of the ball so you can still make a play. It is even more difficult to make one or more turns at that speed while staying in full control. This is what no player has mastered yet. A good way to practice this is just by doing dribbling maps as fast as possible. Trust me, it's harder than it looks. What would be even better though is if there was a map specifically designed for speed, like the wall but for dribbling. The ground can be solid, just like in a real match, as there are situations where it is beneficial to have the ball on the ground. Mastering speed dribbles also involves learning many small parts, like catching the ball out of the air and instantly bringing it to speed, and going into a tight turn from high speed. In that sense, it doesn't necessarily matter how long the dribble is. A very short dribble with few precise, decisive touches is all that is needed. Even if this will not directly let you score like Chaussette, reliably avoiding the player behind you and getting it past one defender is usually much better than shooting on net from distance. I can't know for certain whether dribbles will actually significantly increase in future metas, but one thing is for sure. The meta won't slow down, so dribbles have to speed up. My player to watch would be Alpha, but since he isn't in Madrid, I'm going to name Astral. Next mechanic? Flip resets. What? Yes, flip resets. Although not an uncommon mechanic anymore, I expect even more flip resets in the future. Not necessarily from the players that already go for it 24/7, like Scrub Killer, but from all the players that haven't been using them that much yet. Flip resets fall into the category of mechanic that is very hard to learn, very hard to master, but is very, very useful. Ever since the original We Dem Girls started to consistently use the backboard for setups, teams' backboard defense has been getting better and better. This is not really new. But what can they do to counter it? Often, the players are up high for an aerial in the midfield. Shooting is a bad option, because it will be an easy save. Hitting the backboard also ends up being just a pass to the opponent nowadays. If there is no good pass to a teammate available, a flip reset is often the best option. It will draw a defender out or get you an opportunity for a much more dangerous shot. This kind of situation is not a rare occurrence, and we often see futile attempts at backboard plays that any flip reset master could turn into, at the very least, a threat. The players that aren't using them yet are putting themselves at a disadvantage. We might also see some stalls in the future. These are generally not quite as useful in competitive, as it's more difficult to send the ball flying. But if you go for a lot of flip resets, you're sometimes going to end up in a situation where dodging to any side is just going to make you miss. Another thing that could possibly make its way from freestyling into competitive is the air dribble with an initial flip reset setup. If someone is given a lot of space, they can use this to make their air dribbles a lot more threatening. I'm not too sure that that will become common though. My player to watch is K-Dop. We've already been seeing him take more and more flip resets this season, but my prediction is that the amount will keep increasing for players like him. For the next level usage, I'd name Squishy or Scrub Killer. I do realize that flip resets aren't always an option. For example, when you need to get to the ball as fast as possible to beat an opponent. That's why the next mechanic is the ceiling double touch. When going straight up to beat people, you can always hit it against the ceiling. If you can stay precise enough in the heat of the moment, you can also set yourself up for another touch, potentially very dangerous. And the best part, there's not going to be a defender waiting on the ceiling, unlike the backboard. Of course, what you can do with a second touch is limited. But when the ball rebounds from the ceiling, you can often get a much more powerful shot on the backboard or the net than if you aimed there initially. At least until this mechanic is fully meta, the player on the backboard is also going to have a much harder time reading the play and might even jump, not expecting another touch. It will be very difficult to get consistent at threatening shots from ceiling double taps, but I do think it's a mechanic that we will see significantly more a year from now. My players to watch: Justin and again Astral. Lastly, Wavedashes. Again, you might think that basically every pro uses Wavedashes already whenever they're the fastest way to gain speed. And you wouldn't be wrong. However, there is a way in which they don't use it. I have to admit that I didn't think of this at all until I started to see this from the newcomer Astral. There are many situations in which he will do a simple jump into a wave dash. This may, at first sight, just seem like a pointless habit, but if you look at his positioning, he does it when he can't be sure of what will happen next. The jump is timed when there is no danger in that very moment, but there is something about to happen. For example, a 50-50. The wave dash happens right before the unknown outcome, for which he then has a lot of speed and he will be grounded. That allows him to quickly move up the field or turn around if it went badly. Sometimes he even slows down slightly before the wave dash to make sure he doesn't get too close to the play. Keep in mind, challenging as early as possible isn't always the best option, but challenging with as much speed as possible almost always is. This kind of micro-positioning adjustment is minor, but to do it with boost is inefficient, and if you try to do it with normal dodges, you are invariably going to end up in a spot much closer to the ball. Therefore, I expect this to be adopted by more and more players. What do you think? Are we going to see an increase of these mechanics in the future or not? Is there anything else you would expect to increase in usage in the future? Let me know in the comments. If you're going to Madrid, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll be there and I'll tweet out my location a few times in case you want to meet up. But feel free to talk to me anytime if you see me. Shout out to my patrons who support me financially. To stay up to date, follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, and I'll see you soon for the next video.